Hey everybody, Professor Snart here, checking in once again. I'm recording this about 2 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, and so we are just wrapping up Unit 3 here in our due dates. Happy September, everybody. The weather's changed right on cue, which is kind of weird. Okay, so we turn around now to Unit 4, continuing to work with the short story flight patterns, but also folding in a few more kind of the composition elements. Notice that our next due date is pushed out a little bit from that normal Monday just because Monday is Labor Day. It doesn't totally affect us since we're online, but since people might be traveling or, just have other things going on, figured we might as well make that due date a Tuesday and not the Monday. Okay, so again, hopefully you're getting into kind of the rhythm of the course as far as when things are due and obviously getting comfortable with how things are laid out and all that kind of stuff. Especially if those basic things are still a bit of a struggle, then by all means be in touch with me, and we can, if you're having technical troubles or anything like that. And of course, as we get deeper and deeper into really the content of our course, again, really important to know that, you can reach out to me via email and I'll try to get back to you right away. With big course-related questions, with, smaller things, whatever it is, you're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I'll, again, like I said, get back to you as soon as I can. So let's take a quick look then into Unit 4, which was where we're headed. So I think I'd mentioned then that Unit 3, this whole shape of the paragraph, shape of the essay idea, it's not the only sort of foundational comp thing that we study, or composition thing that we study, but it might be one of the most important. And of course, as we move through, right, keeping in mind that these aren't just one-off things that we do in a unit and then we forget about them. We're ultimately building towards, right, our first essay, and then of course we turn around after that to do the final essay. In fact, just pause here and look at our units. You might notice that it takes us, a fair while to get to essay number 1. So we don't just jump right into that. And it sort of goes along with my theory, or my idea that I want you to keep in mind about if you were to take a history class, let's say, in a really simplified example. You go to class, you learn a bunch of dates, things happened and people were born and died and whatever treaties were signed. And then after you've learned a certain amount of material, you go in for a test and you bubble in the right answer, or you write in the right number, whatever it happens to be. But there's a real clear connection between going to class, right, learning the stuff, whether it's online or face-to-face, and then doing the assessment side, doing the test. The same really goes for us, even though it's not necessarily just bubbling in the correct answer, right? The essays are a little bit more, individualized, but they're no less connected to what we've covered. So obviously, we wouldn't want an essay that comes in Unit 3 that would sort of end up testing you on things that we haven't even covered in the class, right? That would be like giving that history exam, not at the end of studying all of that material, but after just the first week, even though there's, centuries and centuries of history that we would cover in the class, but we haven't actually talked about yet. So it makes sense to me, even though it might feel like it's coming a little late, to have our essay unfold after we've put all of these various pieces in place and we've covered, right, these various things. So if you're wondering why it takes so long to get to the actual essay, that's kind of why. All right, back to Unit 4 then. Really a continuation in some ways of Unit 3. You'll notice that once you've done the Unit 3 paragraph, you'll get this kind of common mistakes little piece of text pop up. Again, it's literally just that, kind of little typos, basic errors that might show up. So, you'll get some feedback, but you can always check against just the more generic feedback in the course here. Did you make some of these basic errors? And again, maybe you'll lose a few points here in the smaller assignment, but what really matters is that you learn from the mistake, and then when we get to those bigger, like essay assignments, bigger point value, you're not repeating that same mistake. When it sort of has a greater impact on your grade, there's more points at stake, right? Again, it doesn't make sense to write a whole essay now when we haven't really worked through this stuff. That's why it takes a while to get there. Okay, so more into the actual part of Unit 4 here. We are going to look at a sample student essay that isn't by any means perfect, but it gives you a good model of the kind of essay that we'll be writing. It's provided here as a PDF because there's no other way to get at it. It's not in our textbook. There's a quick quiz about that sample essay. It's the essay itself is having to do with Faulkner's A Rose for Emily. Pretty famous short story, but you really don't have to have read the short story. We're just focused on how the essay works as an essay. Its tone, its scope, how it kind of like uses material from the story to support its ideas. And again, the point is not just to read it, but actually to read it looking for those particular things, which is really what the quiz does here. Again, not a huge point value thing. You can have the sample essay open in front of you, right? There's no things to memorize. It's just drawing your attention to sort of how the essay works. Okay, then a little bit about thesis statements. Obviously a really important part of the kind of writing that we're doing, that analytical or argumentative type of writing. Ours take on a slightly even more narrowly defined character, given that we're writing about works of literature, right, short stories or whatever from our textbook. So we clearly need something that works as a thesis that's not just a topic, right, that a certain author uses symbolism or uses imagery. That's true, but no one would really disagree with that reasonably. So that's not going to work, right? That's too broad. And we certainly don't want our thesis to be like a direct quotation from a primary text like a short story. That would be way too narrow. So our thesis, to be effective, really needs to find a kind of middle ground. Again, you can see how that works in the sample essay, and then learn a little bit about the theory of it here in preparation for putting it into practice when we obviously write the essay that we'll finally get to. All right, a little bit more about writing process. Again, it's important that you work through this stuff, even though there's no like quiz necessarily attached to it, outside of course, the major essays that we write. My thing with writing process is that there's no one that is the right one or that will work for everybody, but it's important to recognize that even if you don't think about it, you do have a writing process. And for too many people, I think, because you're not really actively thinking about it, you're not aware of it, your process basically is get assignment, write essay. It feels efficient, or like, what else would you do? You don't want to add a whole bunch of steps because you're already under the gun for getting this thing done on time. But often I think people who are unaware of their process, they end up investing what feels like a lot of energy, like literally intellectual energy, but also sort of like the emotional stress of writing the essay, and they don't always see that paid back in the grade that they'd like to get. So it felt like they did a lot of work, but they're not always seeing that really good grade. And truthfully, it's certainly not because people are born good writers or not born good writers or whatever myths we like to talk about. I think a lot of it has to do with unexamined writing process. Again, not that there's one that I can teach you that will fix every problem, but if all you do is get the assignment and then just start writing in a document, that's not really effective. And in fact, it's a bit counterintuitive, but I'll almost guarantee to you that if you can add some steps to your writing process, strategically, of course, not just like doing things randomly, it will A, make your essay better, which matters, but it'll B, also feel less like emotionally and intellectually taxing. Because by doing something as simple as planning, step number 3 here, or doing some background research, building an outline, for example, instead of jumping right into like number 4, the writing part, you're seeing how things are going to map out before just starting to write on the page, and then it's like you're kind of getting things mixed up, and they're jumbled, and they're repeated, and there's big gaps, and there's just all kinds. Even though you're investing all of that work, it's not actually producing a really great product. So taking some time to think about what your process is, and is it really as effective as it could be, is really the whole point here. It's not that there's one size fits all. And again, counterintuitively, adding more steps can sometimes make not just the end product better, but the whole process more effective and even efficient, right? I know it doesn't sound right, but doing more things makes it go quicker, not longer. Okay, so you can sort of reflect on that, and then obviously keep that in your mind as we move into a little ways down the road when we're actually writing our first essay. What is the process that you're using, and is it really as effective as it could be? All right, another reading from our textbook here, actually showing up in the textbook. and a quick quiz, the elements of the essay. Again, some important just composition things to think about. How do introductions work? How do quotations work or sources work as a part of like supporting an idea? And again, you know, have the reading open as you're doing the quiz. There's no need to memorize or anything like that. In fact, again, the quiz itself is fairly low point value. What matters to me is that the quiz draws your attention to a few important things from the reading that you can then apply when it really does matter in the major essays that we write, the bigger point value things. Okay, last but not least then, picking up a little bit with our thinking about the flight patterns short story in a discussion board format, answering some questions about it, and then replying again to 2 other classmates. This is a little bit about, I guess, training ourselves or getting more practice with close reading of a text. In other words, you don't just read it once and try to get everything, but you sort of have to get back into it. You think about it strategically. You ask some important questions about character or whatever else is happening here. So again, it may feel like it doesn't necessarily lead to the essay that you'll write because you won't cover this story, but it still is good practice in closely reading the text, which is going to be really important to writing a successful essay when it comes time to do so. Okay, so lots of things to work through here in Unit 4. Again, try to keep that all framed in terms of this scaffold we're working towards to finally get to that first essay. I'm just going to go back to our units list because that helps to sort of see how it all works towards our first essay, a couple of units away still. And then you might notice that we don't do a bunch of other stuff or new stuff. We actually turn right around and start prepping for our final essay since, again, the building blocks are all in place. We just want to actually put them into practice in that whole, put all the puzzle pieces together. Okay, as always, questions, concerns, be in touch with me, and I will check in with everybody probably post Labor Day. So have a good long weekend.